After more than 8 years of development, Fairy Knife Hell has finally been finished and publicly released for anyone to go and try. The hosts themselves have described the level as humanly impossible, although physically possible, similar to other modern-day impossible levels such as Misanthrope and, of course, Aeternus. Naturally, I wanted to make a video on whether this level could possibly be verified in the future. In today's video, we'll go over what the host has said, compare its likeness to other impossible levels that have been verified in the past, and give a general guess as to how long this might take. If you enjoyed today's video, please remember to like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton and you can always undo it later. And without further ado, let's get into the video. In the full showcase video for Fairy Knife Hell, the host, Aeternus, apologies if I mispronounced that, clarifies that, quote, "We're all pretty much in agreement that this version of the level is impossible. Not physically impossible since everything is definitely beatable, but doing it in one run is a whole different story. It is definitely theoretically possible, but I'm pretty much convinced that this level is not humanly possible to beat. Feel free to prove me wrong though, but I do not recommend it since this is a nightmare to play." So already based off of this descriptions, you can kind of draw some comparisons to other impossible levels of the past that were also considered to be humanly impossible years ago, but eventually were actually beaten. The characteristics outlined here that of course stand out to me are that it's really unfun to play, and while each individual part of the level is possible, there is such an incredibly long time span in the level that a large portion of the difficulty comes from the fact that doing 3.5 minutes of this gameplay all in one run is an entirely different story. In terms of other impossible levels that have had notably terrible gameplay but have still gotten verified, pick your poison. It's basically all of them. Generally speaking, impossible levels are not built to have enjoyable gameplay at all. It's just kind of impossible for the sake of being impossible. Most of the time, creators of impossible levels never think that anyone would seriously try to beat it because it's so absurd, which is almost certainly the case here. At the end of the day, all it really takes is one incredibly dedicated player with a lot of skill to take on a level with some of the worst gameplay, whether they are motivated by personal achievement, fame, list points, whatever. So I don't think that this would necessarily factor in too heavily into whether this would be verified or not, because basically every impossible level, verified or not, sucks ass to play. The only reason that it sticks out to me in general is that the gameplay is pretty heavily affected by the decoration, so players who tend to heavily rely on visuals being relatively simple, such as people who usually use ULDMs or Pesta, I guess, would probably not be able to verify this level, at the very least not quickly enough, if there is a race to beat this level. However, the counterweight to that is the fact that this level is much longer, meaning that, in theory, it should be more accessible to your average player to make progress, at least marginally so compared to other levels like Aeternus. In my mind, a verification of Fairy Knife Hell would probably go very similarly to how it did for Abyss of Darkness. Firstly, we just start with someone who has a very intense fixation or appreciation of the level, despite the fact that it's basically impossible, the gameplay does not play very well, and it's quite a lengthy level. That player starts to make steady progress regardless of their standing in the community, and then eventually, as they get closer and closer to verifying the level, perhaps getting some end deaths, especially because of the length of this level and the nerves that would be associated with that, whoever the current top players of the community are at that time will likely swoop in and try to beat the level for themselves. However, the gap between levels like Fairy Knife Hell and our current top one, Tidal Wave, is much larger than the difficulty gap between Abyss of Darkness when it was first created and the top one of that time. At least that's what I suspect, as both Fairy Knife Hell and Tidal Wave are 3-minute extremes, with one of them being clearly much more difficult than the other in basically every possible way. In other words, it could take years for someone to have the skills to beat Fairy Knife Hell, or to even take a crack at it, meaning that in order for Fairy Knife Hell to be verified, someone would still need to know about it, and know about it enough to be interested in completing it much farther into the future than was the case with a level like Abyss of Darkness. This level also isn't necessarily something like Silent Clubstep, where it's a massive, famous, low-quality level that never tapers or fades into the background. So the chances of people remembering this level for long enough to reach the point in time where someone is able to verify this is a taller order than it is with levels like Silent Clubstep or AOD. I think that this is probably the only reason why I have any doubt that this could be verified. It is definitely possible. I think that this level could very much be verified even by someone like Zoink if given enough time and effort. I just don't necessarily think that they would choose to, as there are probably better, more enjoyable ways to verify a new top 1. And besides, Zoink has already verified like 16 top 1s. It's like whatever. My guess is that if a top player verifies this, it's probably someone that we either A, don't know of yet, or someone who's up and coming like W Popoff. So while I definitely do think it is possible for this level to be verified, whether it actually is verified or not remains to be seen. I think the decoration and the long-standing presence of this level boost its chances, and my guess would be that if it was to be verified, it would be done so in maybe 3 to 4 years, which is a pretty tentative estimate, and also, I would assume that most people who are trying to verify impossible levels will probably be going for Aeternus for quite some time. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Comment down below what you think of this level, whether it will be verified in the future, or if you think it's not even possible, and that I'm completely wrong. And while you're at it, let me know what you actually think of this level's decoration. I personally think it's really cool, and a really unique spin on Red Impossible Extreme demons. A lot of the, demons in the level I find really interesting, and much more creative than what I normally see, I think. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Stay safe.